Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mint Your Thoughts. Today, believe it or not, we actually have a shooting video for you where I actually got some time to go out and go to the range. So what I have before me here, this is my M16 clone that you guys have seen on the channel before. Now, you may notice that this optic is camouflaged and looks a little bit different. What this is a 4-power retro from Brownells, the Colt Repro that they did, where it's a 4-powered scope that's fixed to a carry handle. Kind of get a better view of this up here, and you'll get a better view of this too in the footage where I go shooting. So this previously lived on this rifle, where I've swapped it out for a red dot, as you can see up top here. Mainly with that, it's just, with this rifle, it just wasn't all that practical to have that fixed 4-power on there. I do like the fixed 4-power, but I like having a red dot on here a little bit better. So kind of swap that out with my restless gun syndrome. And so what I decided to do is I wanted to see how effective this rifle was with the 4-power, and if it could kind of be like a, I don't know, like a budget or retro marksman's rifle. Like, how accurate could I actually be with this 4-power? At what distance can I make reliable hits? And how good is it really in this configuration? Now, what I'm using for this is a palmetto lower, and this is actually, believe it or not, a Bear Creek Arsenal upper. So why am I using Bear Creek? Well, a while back, probably about a year ago or so, I made a video where it was kind of a part 1 of 3 different uppers that they had sent me. And throughout, the last year or so, I've been kind of going back and forth testing with them, and really I've only shot this one all that well, to be honest, because I like this aesthetically and it pleases me. I'm a big fan of the old school M16 kind of body. This does have the detached carry handle, and it's basically the first rifle I shot when I joined the Navy, when we did our rifle quals at Master at Arms School down in San Antonio. This is what I was brought up shooting on. So I've kind of got like a nostalgia thing for it. So whether the reliability or anything else doesn't check out, just keeping it just for the cool factor of how it looks, is probably what I'm going to wind up doing. Now, my thing is, what's my relationship with BCA? Well, let's be honest. So I have an affiliate link with them, although I really don't ever use it. I signed up for it a while back. I haven't really used it that much. So between them sending me a few things to do for giveaways or the 3 uppers they have sent, I haven't really got anything else from them. And even though I have an affiliate link with them, I'm not afraid to tell you my honest thoughts on this. So when it comes to BCA, I really wanted to try this out and see if it really was good. The videos online are kind of 50-50 when it comes to reliability with this. I think the biggest issue that they have is a lot of quality control. Kind of reminds me where Palmetto was about 10 years ago, where you could get a diamond in the rough, or you could get a complete piece of crap. And so my thing is, when it comes to BCA, I know people are going to have difference of opinion and different experiences, but as far as what I've been sent, they've worked out really, really well. This thing has kept on chugging and has no problems. As far as, like, I've put probably about 1,000 rounds through here so far. I haven't had any issues when it comes to this rifle. That said, as far as people I know that have purchased pieces on their own from them, who have purchased uppers on their own, they have had some quality control issues with either handguard screws not being loose. One case, like the barrel itself was actually loose. The nuts there hadn't been tightened down, and a few other quality control issues. Reno May's got a whole video about that. So kind of take this as a grain of salt. I'm not saying they're cherry picking what they send out to influencers, social media type people or whatever, right? But my experience has been pretty good for the people I know that have bought from them, maybe not so much. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm not 100% sure across on that. So just keep that in mind. Now, what I'm going to be using as kind of my comparison, whether it's fair or not, is my Daniel Defense. So my Daniel Defense here is a DD-M4V7. It has a Vortex 1-6 up top. I know in previous videos I said 1-8. That's because I'm retarded. This is a 1-6 on here. This is the Viper PST up top. So really good glass clarity and a little bit higher magnification. So whenever I'm doing my zeroing at the range that I'm going to be at, I'm going to use this to kind of verify my hits on paper, as well as kind of see how this performs comparatively to the BCA. And the idea behind here, again, is because I do like this aesthetic and the retro stuff is kind of coming back into play. This was kind of the setup that your dads or grandpas may have used if they were going to be using any kind of, like, maybe not DMR, but some type of specialized rifle to where, you wanted to have some kind of marksman rifle in 5.56 with a 20-inch barrel. And if back then, with an M16A2 with a fixed carry handle, this was kind of the way to do things. This was the ACOG before it was cool. Agent Espo has a cool video about that, about this being kind of like the 4-power that your daddy used, the trigger con before it was cool. So it is an interesting concept, and kind of wanted to see, like, hey, with a plain rifle like this, maybe adding a light to the end of it, how well will this perform as kind of a poor man's DMR, especially with Palmetto making a lot of kits for this, BCA coming in really cheap. Can you make a reliable kind of designated marksman-ish rifle? And the distances I'm going to be shooting at are going to be between about 1 and 500 yards with the range that I have access to. Really, it actually goes up to 200, and then there's a big gap and goes up to 5. So we're going to see how well this performs in a couple of different levels with the Daniel Defense. Now, one thing to make note of real quick before we dive into that, and I'm trying not to spend all my time talking because we do have a good bit of range footage, is that the special feature on the Brownells 4 Power is that this actually has this dial up top here, where not only is this your elevation that you can adjust by the inner nub here, but this adjusts out to yardages of 1 to 500 yards. And so what this is you can dial this optic in. Instead of having a bullet drop compensation reticle, it has just a standard crosshair reticle, but you can actually twist this to 1 to 200, 300, 400, and 500 yards. If you know the distance you're shooting at, like at a flat range where I'm going, in theory, this should adjust your optic to hit dead on every time, at least elevation-wise. So we're gonna go out and test that and see how well both the rifle and the optic perform together. Now, as with any new optic, the first thing you gotta go do is zero it. So I drove out to the Shoshone County rifle range again and decided to zero this at 50 yards. Now, personally, I prefer a 50 to 200 yard zero. That's my personal preference. It's gonna really depend on what distances you intend to shoot, how likely you are to shoot out those distances. I know some people prefer 25 yard, some people prefer 100 yard. For me, just the compensation that is required to hit targets at further distances or at closer distances is a little bit easier for me when I'm shooting at a 50 yard zero. That's my personal preference. You can see here in the diagram included the differences between the 25, 50, and 100 yard zeros. These are using 16-inch barrels and standard M193 ammunition. So kind of similar to what I'm doing. I am, however, using a 20-inch barrel, so there's going to be a slight difference. But for me, I prefer the 50 yard zero. Again, you guys can fight about this in the comments on who's right or who's wrong, and tell me what you think the better zero is for this. Now, unfortunately, because of the way that this thing mounts, this optic onto the carry handle, it's not easy to maintain your zero from one rifle to another, at least what I've noticed. So it did take a while to actually get this thing zeroed in until I started getting both the group size that I wanted, as well as putting the rounds on paper where I wanted them to go. So the glass clarity on this too can leave a little bit lacking. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a really good picture or camera view of the glass clarity. But even just shooting at 50 yards, the reticle did take up a fair bit of space. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a really good camera view of that, which I really wanted to show, but my phone was just not cooperating with it. The eye relief also is a bit rough. You can see how close I have to get on the rifle to make those shots. So finally, I got to a point where I was happy enough with the accuracy I was getting to try to push out, do some drills, and see how well the rifle can perform. Now, unfortunately, I only have the one camera, so I have the one camera angle, but I'm transitioning between targets between 50 and 100 yards to see how easy it is to reacquire the target using this optic. So this is where this optic kind of started to show its age. It does have a smaller field of view than most modern optics, and the eye relief is a little rough. You do have to get pretty close up on it. So reacquiring targets, trying to do transitionary drills, can be a little bit of a challenge, but after a few rounds and after a couple magazines of doing this, it got a little bit easier. I think it's more of a training issue and getting used to the optic than it is anything else. Is it still a viable optic for this? Absolutely. I think it just requires a little bit more time on the rifle than like a standard LPVO or red dot and magnifier. So now it was time to see how well this stacked up against modern optics and modern rifles. So with my Daniel Defense setup, with my Vortex 1-6, I got out the bipod and decided to do the exact same drill, transitioning between 50 to 100 yards to see how well this rifle performs compared to the retro rifle with the retro optic, and see how much have we really advanced and can this optic hold its own in today's market. Going back and re-watching this footage, it became pretty apparent there was a significant time difference in how long it took me to reacquire the target and get rounds downrange between the modern optics and the retro optics. Is the retro optic doable? Absolutely. Was the time between shots really that crazy? Not really.
But the better eye relief, the better glass clarity, and the better eye box of the modern optics definitely showed the age on the 4-power. So for the next drill, I decided from the standing to fire 2 rounds on the 50 and 2 rounds on the 100. The only catch was I had 2 sets of targets. On the left-hand side, I had targets for the retro rifle, and on the right-hand side, I had targets for the modern rifle. So the drill was not only could I transition appropriately, but could I identify which target was the appropriate target and put the 2 rounds on it, center mass, as quickly as possible, and see how well these 2 rifles stacked up.
Better than the other one I had. I got it up.
So to no one's surprise, the Daniel Defense once again was faster and easier to get on target with the modern day optics. That being said, the 4-power was still very usable. I'm satisfied enough with how well it performed, and I would say that while it does show its age, it's definitely still useful in certain applications. That being said, the one area that I thought the 4-power actually did a little bit better of a job was at distance shooting. Again, if you'll remember from the beginning, it has the settings to set out to known distances between 1 to 500 yards. And if you look very far in the distance at where I've circled, there is a target out there at 500 yards. I found that the retro, when shooting at a known distance, was actually a little bit easier to use just because you could dial out to 500 and send it. That was it. That's all you had to do. Dial out, send it, and I hit it every time. Now, that being said, it wasn't hard to get on target with the modern day rifle with modern optics. It's just that I had to use the bullet drop compensation reticle and actually kind of think about it a little bit more, whereas with the retro I could just dial it out to 500 and send it.
Okay guys, so closing thoughts. When it came down to everything between the Daniel Defense and the BCA, I'm not changing what my go-to rifle is. I'm still going to go with the Daniel Defense with their modern optics and such. I will say glass clarity for me was a big issue whenever I came down to this, as I kind of talked about in the video. That glass clarity was a big thing. The clarity of glass on the modern day Vortex was a lot better than it was on the Repro. Now the Repro is still pretty decent, but your field of view is a lot smaller and your eye relief is real rough. You got to get real up on this thing. So you can definitely see that it's dated whenever you come down to it. You know, you really got to sink in on this thing to get that good eye relief. It is adjustable, but not anywhere near as much as I would like it to be. That being said, as far as hitting targets out to 500 yards, I did find that I don't shoot that out that far that often. This is kind of a newer thing to me that I find this range. I do want to push myself out that far. Normally I'm shooting 1 to 3 tops. So pushing out to 500 yards was a little bit more of a challenge for me, and kind of just getting more used to that. And I will say, having to use the reticle system and like the BDC on my Vortex just took a little trial and error to realize, like, okay, yeah, that's what I'm doing right. With this, being able to click it out to 500 real quick and just get right on target was a lot easier. I did find that. Now, as far as transitional targets, when I was doing the drills between 50 to 100 yards, I do think it was a little bit easier to get on target quickly with the better field of view and the better eye box that I have on the Daniel than it was with this guy. This guy was a little bit hard to make sure I'm hitting accurate shots, trying to get center mass of those targets, but it's good enough. I think if I'm trying to hit a man-sized target, I definitely would have hit that. I'm not hitting bullseyes. So as far as like a battlefield optic, and kind of that's what this was designed for, was to give whoever was using the rifle a little bit of an edge when it came to just using this over iron sights. I think it definitely accomplishes a goal. It's definitely nowhere near, honestly, the modern day stuff. I'm not going to say it's just as good, but if you happen to like the retro stuff and you happen to like that aesthetic, I think it's a really good option for you. And it does take a little bit of getting used to. It will take a little bit of training to perfect. But if that's all you have, if you have this or like an old school carry handle, M4 style rifle, and you want to have a little bit of magnification without ruining kind of the aesthetic of it, that's a great way to go, and it does give you some greater capability. It just takes a little bit more getting used to and a little bit more practice. So overall, I think this could potentially, with the right amount of training, or with the right person, be a very effective tool for that purpose. In the meantime, I'm still going to stick with my modern rifle. We've made a lot of advances when it comes to optics and it comes to rifles, and it kind of shows. Cool option if you want to keep the retro aesthetic. Use the 4-power. If you're looking for more practicality, use the modern stuff. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.